everybody, and welcome to today's training industry webinar, Enterprise VR Training, Key Lessons from Early Adopters, sponsored by VR Vision. I'm Avangrid, Events Coordinator at Training Industry, and I'm so happy you could join us. Before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to chat comments into the chat window and submit questions in your Q&A window. We will address all comments and questions throughout the event or at the end of the program during our Q&A section. We also encourage you to share the information. Sorry, I guess my volume is not working great. 1 second. How about now? Can you all hear me? Great. We also encourage you to share the information you received today with your colleague and network via social media. Please follow at VR Vision Inc. and hashtag TI webinars so we're able to track your contribution to the conversation. When the program ends, you'll receive a short evaluation survey and we would greatly welcome your feedback. As always, today's webinar will be recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will be receiving a follow-up email from us that will include a link to the on-demand program. If this is your first webinar with us, a special welcome goes out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's webinar, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, courses, research reports, and our podcast. Make Training Industry your go-to resource for learning solutions. Visit trainingindustry.com to learn more. And now, without further ado, let me introduce you to our wonderful lineup of speakers today. Ronnie Circa, CEO at VR Vision, is a passionate business leader and innovator. His vision has helped shape world-class offerings by utilizing cutting-edge, cross-functional growth strategies. He maintains strong fundamentals by investing in a diverse organizational culture and people, streamlined processes, and the very best in product quality. Holly Bratzman serves as the Senior Manager of Training and Human Resources at Toyota Material Handling, Inc., where she's responsible for enhancing external talent for more than 230 dealership locations across North America. With access to an industry-leading lineup of material handling products, Toyota dealers are uniquely positioned to help solve wide-ranging challenges in warehousing and distribution. James Fox is responsible for technical training across all of Avangrid's utility companies. With 8 utilities across 4 states, the training environment is ever-changing with the need to ensure safety and competence. Avangrid's training team utilizes emerging technologies such as a mixed reality to greatly enhance the training delivered throughout the company. And lastly, we have Jonathan Buckley, who is a strategy and operations learning leader with 25 years of experience leading and optimizing the delivery of customer management solutions for large utility organizations in Canada, the US, and the UK. Jonathan is responsible for business change, training, continuous improvement, and quality assurance for Hydro One's customer care function, serving 1.5 million customers across Ontario, Canada. Ronnie will be kicking us off with today's presentation. So Ronnie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Avery. Much appreciated. Just going to share my screen. Fantastic. And can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can see it. It just looks like it needs to be in presentation mode.
Yes.
There we go.
Fantastic. So I'm going to start with the introductions. Although Avery stole my thunder a little bit. Thank you for the introductions. It's always easier when somebody else introduces you than you have to do it yourself. But to speak a little bit about the agenda today, I will just be focusing on the introductions to the webinar and kind of like the overview for it, while hoping that the majority of it will be covered by our amazing speakers, Jim, Holly, and Jonathan. What to expect from the webinar, at least for the next 1 hour that we'll be here together, is going to be basically broken down into several main points. Each speaker is going to have a quick introduction about their organization. Then they're going to talk about the VR courses that they've been creating, who they were made for, why they chose that specific course and use case for VR training, and the key benefits. But more interesting, I think, for most of you here is going to be kind of like some great insights that they can share around lessons learned in deploying VR training. And I hope you'll all have some great takeaways from this webinar. Learn a little bit about why VR is being used and adopted in the enterprise, some of the more popular use cases. And of course, maybe you can learn from the challenges that some of the speakers here have faced in the past so that you can avoid them in the future. The three applications that the speakers will focus on will be focusing more around their each individual experiences. So I won't steal their thunder there. At the same time, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Anything technical, our team will be very happy to answer. If there are questions specific to the speakers, we can have those answers at the end for you. We will start with a quick poll, and right after the poll, we'll be handing it over to Jim. So I guess we can kick off the poll here, Avery. Fantastic. You should all see this little poll pop up on your screen. I'll give everyone a little bit of time to vote here before we move on. Oh, and for the speakers, starting with Jim, whenever you need a slide changed, just let me know and I'll click. In the meantime, I'll be muted.
Got it. Well, thanks for having me today, Ronnie. Are we good with the poll? You want me to get going, or you want a couple more minutes on the poll?
No, the poll's closed. I think enough people voted. Thanks, Jim. I see the results right there.
Cost of investment. Okay, got it.
There you go. Very interesting. Okay.
All right. So Ronnie and Avery did hit all the key points with introducing me. A few key points about Avangrid. We are a leading sustainable energy company in America. I represent the utility side of the business, so oversee operating companies in the Northeast, Connecticut, New York, Maine, and Massachusetts. But we do have a renewable side of the business. It's overseen by my counterpart, Sam Akey, who also participates in many mixed reality offerings and virtual reality offerings with VR Vision. As you can see here, roughly $41 billion in assets in America and growing. So we are a very robust company, both on the renewables and on the network side of the business. On the network side of the business, we have about a little over 3 million customers, well, 3.3 million customers for both electric and natural gas. So that's a little bit about me and Avangrid. And with that, we can get into some of the VR stuff. All right, so what we're going to talk today is about Novus and our non-recloser switching module. I will say, starting with our target audience, the majority of the work that we do is around our apprentice training. So our apprentices typically are with us for 3 years on and off for classroom training, on-the-job training, and then competency analysis, basically. So for us, our major client is our apprentices. We do some refresher training, but our apprentices are, I would say, 90% of our focus. And for all of our modules, not just the switching and tagging module, we chose very rare and highly dangerous scenarios. So the scenario that you're looking at right now can be quite complex. It's a scenario that a lot of our apprentices don't get to see on a regular basis. And then it gives us the opportunity for them to work together with their multiplayer module. So for us, this was highly critical that we could build a scenario that allowed our apprentices that don't get a lot of OJT doing this exact process. They could join virtually, not only by themselves, but with their peers and a trainer, and really enact this. And while it's not hands-on the job training, this is as close as we've ever been able to get. So this was a huge win for us. And you can just see, I talked about the key benefits a little bit right there, right? We're developing competencies without requiring the work in the field to be present. A lot of times these jobs don't need to be done, or they're done by highly skilled individuals within the different divisions that we represent. And as such, our apprentices that are very new to the job don't get a lot of exposure to them. They're often shipped off to do more menial tasks. And so from a training standpoint, we said, how can we make a more robust asset for on-the-job training for all of the people that we work with so frequently? Because they come to us, we spend 2 weeks with them doing hands-on and classroom training, and then they go back to their division. And so we really rely on our divisions to promote those hands-on trainings. And they do a very nice job when they are available. So this one was a huge win for us. We've had a lot of health and safety incidents around switching and tagging. Can be very dangerous for the person doing the switching, as well as their counterparts that are working the lines. So this was very beneficial to us, and hit on a few more key points, I think, on the next slide when you switch it over here, Ronnie. So as far as key insights and takeaways, one thing that I did want to discuss, but really wanted to talk about it on this slide, is starting with the holistic plan and thinking big. In the module you just saw, in the pictures of the modules below, originally we decided that a substation walkthrough was going to be kind of where we started. And that was great. It got a lot of people talking, a lot of people thinking, but then we said, what's the next step? And we immediately thought, well, why don't we build a virtual duplicate, a digital twin of one of the areas that we work in. And that's where we went metaverse, and where you can see the town that we call Novus. On the bottom right here, you can see it's a full virtual reality town with all of the utilities that we work, overhead lines, natural gas components. This year, as you can see in the middle there, we've created a vault. And so now all of our training scenarios that we conduct, not only at our training yard, but also in the fields, we can now work on replicating those virtually. And that was a absolutely enormous win for us, because we went from maybe performing a few training modules within a substation to the sky is the limit with everything we do within this town. So that's been huge for us. And that's where you see, think big, because originally we thought we were thinking big, and we could have thought bigger, and where we ended up today. Another thing that we really saw benefit with is getting our veterans in quickly, and having them act as SMEs in the creation of these modules. There's a lot of skepticism as they're sending pictures and giving their recounts of the work that they do. The vault module is a great example of it. We had our underground workers talking about, okay, yeah, no, this, you guys go ahead and create the vault. Here's some pictures, and here's, some voiceover of things that we would like to see done. And when we put our SMEs in the headsets on the back end, they were the quickest to say, we have to show the apprentices this. How soon can we bring in the apprentices to show them what's been built? How soon can we deploy this across all of our divisions? Because this is where we're going. This is the way of the future. And then with that is also use the data, right? So as we scale this, as we, again, expand it out to our divisions, we have endless amounts of data at our fingertips. Where are people succeeding? Where are people falling short? And then we're still in kind of our preliminary stages of being able to really analyze that data effectively, but it's really going to show us where the gaps in our training is. Where do we need to do more classroom training, more hands-on training? What are our apprentices struggling with that maybe they're afraid to tell us about? Where do we have to develop new hands-on? And where can we develop new virtual reality experiences as well? So that's kind of what the work we've done with VR Vision in a nutshell. It's been an amazing journey, and we've won awards both internally and externally with the work that's been done, and can't thank Ronnie and the team enough for all the support that we've had for the last, I think we're going on 3+ years now. So that's what I got.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'll just pass it on to Holly.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. My name is Holly Brutzman, and I am the Senior Manager of Training here at Toyota Material Handling. A lot of people here at Toyota, and they want to tell you about their Camry and how many miles are on it. So we may share the same name, but I'm actually with the Material Handling Division. And we offer an expansive lineups of products and services to address a wide array of challenges in the warehouse and distribution industry. Since 1990, we've been providing customers with high quality products assembled here at our award-winning manufacturing facility in Columbus, Indiana. If you're not familiar with where Columbus is located, we're centrally located between Indianapolis, Indiana, and Louisville, Kentucky. At this location, we manufacture and distribute forklifts, order pickers, automated guided vehicles, tow tractors, container handlers, and much more. And along with us, our dealer network offers industry-leading sales, service, and support to create partnerships for life. So that's a little bit about Toyota and myself. And now I will share with you about our VR experience. The course that we're going to be highlighting, which is now playing on the screen, is our core electric part identification course. This was our first VR experience, and we chose something with a little bit less complexity. This gave us the opportunity to learn more about the development process since we were just first entering the VR world, and it also gave our learners the ability to adapt to new technology. This course in particular is specifically geared towards our service technicians within our dealer network. So we have more than 230 locations and just over 4,000 technicians. Some of them may be located on the road and going to customer locations for servicing, but some of them are also located at the dealers. The intention of this is to provide them with skills to troubleshoot and diagnose issues, and then overall to better serve the customer. We have more than 300 product models. So I'll say that again, more than 300 products and various models that are available to our customer base. So it would be extremely rare that all of these models would be available at any given time at all locations and available for training for our technicians. You may want to imagine too a lift truck that's large enough to offload a cargo ship or a rail car. That's our heavy duty lineup, and most of these products won't fit inside of a building, let alone be a stock item. So what VR allowed us to do was to bring the truck to the technician in a realistic environment. The VR technology that we have here, this is simulated in our lab that we have available here if technicians come on site for training. But it allows them to acquire that hands-on experience in a safe space, and we don't have to worry about a new technician potentially damaging the product. In addition to the technician's adoption of new skills, we can help them build the confidence so they can do the work. And we also use this for pre-employment assessments. So oftentimes a dealership may be getting ready to hire a new technician. The technician comes in and says, I have these very specific skills. This is how I can help you. VR technology allows the dealership to verify that information and then assign the appropriate job responsibilities based on that. VR has also helped us reinforce standardized work and promote safe behaviors by following a sequence of steps during the troubleshooting process. This is one of our electric products, so inadvertently, if a technician goes in the VR and they start repairing or identifying parts and they have failed to unplug the battery, it's going to mimic a shock. And then they would obviously not be shocked in the VR world, but it can help prevent future issues for them. So anyway, that's just one example of how we're promoting safe behaviors. All right, and then with anything new that we do, there's always lessons learned. So Ronnie, if you want to move to the next slide. The VR development, I'll just name a few things here, but the VR development project was led by the dealer training team, and they required support from other areas of the business, such as engineering. So we had to work closely with engineering to get product models. We had to work with IT for the learning management system integration pieces. Those are just a few that I'll name out, but we didn't engage with them early and often. So once it came to that particular project milestone, we were working with them and they weren't always as quick to respond to our needs. So my advice is if you're going to be working on a VR project is to connect with other parties early and often. Here at Toyota, we call that Nimawashi, and that's to build consensus with involved parties ahead of time. Additionally, I believed, I shouldn't speak for the entire team, that VR was more widely adopted. And in reality, many of our learners are experiencing VR for the first time when they take our course. So these learners had a very difficult time just navigating those initial screens prior to entering the course. So my advice on this would be to create some tutorials and instructions for that initial startup, because you want to minimize the frustration, especially if they're using it for the first time. Another challenge that we've had is a very diverse workforce. I think everybody's faced with this. Our workforce represents various generations. Some of them have been very eager to try new technology, and others have not been very interested at all. So at Toyota, VR is not considered a replacement to existing training curriculum that we have, but instead it's considered, as an alternate delivery method. So make sure that you have various delivery methods that appeal to your learners available to them. And then the final lesson learned is connectivity. We learned this the hard way a few times. Connectivity can be a big issue. So depending on where you're at, it could be an isolated area, or networks are becoming more and more secure. So my advice is to test those connections in advance and make sure that you have a backup plan in place if for some reason you aren't able to access the headset. And that's all that I have. So I will now turn it over to Jonathan.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Buckley here from Hydro One. I'm the Senior Manager of Business Process and Change in the Customer Care Division. So I'm here to talk about our new connection VR training module for Hydro One. We are the largest electricity provider in Ontario, Canada. We have 1.5 million customers, largely in a very rural setting. So most of our operational sites are in urban areas, but most of our customers live in a very rural, low density area. And to put it into context, we actually have more wooden distribution poles than customers, just to set the scene there in terms of the service area that we provide. We serve around about 26% of the Ontario population, and we became traded in the Ontario Stock Exchange in 2015. Our service area covers around about 640,000 square kilometers. So it's a very, very vast, dense province. And as I said, it's got low density in areas, which is one of the key areas we wanted to explore VR to help really connect our employees with our service territory. So moving to the next slide. So our first module is the new connection journey. So a new connection is where a customer has purchased a plot of land, maybe a cottage, or they're moving into developing a new area, and that customer wants to connect a new service. So we have to design the connection to the local distribution grid, work through various different sets of information with the customer through obligation setting and payment processing in order to get everything ready ahead of their new connection. So it is a very complex process and can take several months to complete, depending on the complexity of the case. So we picked new connection as our first journey, largely because we heard loud and clear in our employee engagement surveys that our customer service representatives and our customer facing staff in our field offices regionally around the province wanted to get a better understanding of what happens out in the field. So actually looking at our equipment, looking at the service territory, and to put it into context, a lot of our staff who live and work in urban areas, all the infrastructure for electricity may be underground, and they may be not having as much exposure to all the above ground assets that many of our customers experience every day as they use our products and services. So we wanted to bring the rural environment into an urban area, and that was really largely due to our employee engagement with feedback and learning experiences that our staff really expressed they wanted to learn about. So that's how we picked the initial use case, and we landed on the new connection journey because it is complex, as I said. So our customer service reps will work hand in hand with the customer, collect lots of information. They'll ask lots of questions about the plot of land that the customer has purchased, and they'll enter all that into one of our core billing systems. And after that point, that particular journey becomes a reference number or an activity that happens further down the scene. So we talk about the type of equipment, the type of connection, and we talk about all the various different teams involved. And we've in the past tried to use videos and pictures in order to make that come alive for our frontline staff. So we landed on the new connection journey because it allows us to actually take a new connection right from where the customer first contacts the contact center, right through to where that meter is finally energized and that customer has power going to their property. So the customer service reps and the field regional staff can go through those modules, and they can watch every various different scene, and they're able to actually listen to the sounds, the sights, and they can see all the different teams involved. It's lots of multiple teams coming from different parts of the province to actually complete the installation. So they can watch all those various teams provide input into that new connection process. And it really provides a lot of context why sometimes it may take a little longer in a complex area, or if the customer hasn't completed all their obligations, why things may get delayed. And you can see each individual team as they participate in that new connection journey. You can watch the progression of the case as it matures through the life cycle of a new connection. So Hydro One is very vast. We have lots of driving time to get to lots of our customer premises, and some of those customers have lots of equipment. So we're able to use the training to actually show the office-based staff the actual equipment out in the field. So they can look at a transformer, they can look at a switch, they can look at a linesman making or linesperson making a change to a particular connection to actually bring that customer onto the grid in a very safe and efficient way. It's not really practical for our frontline staff to head out into the field to need to go through a number of field safety training before they can enter a work site. Also, all the personal protective equipment is required, and it will take us a very long time to get staff cycled through to those remote locations, so they get to feel part of that customer journey. So the big advantage to us throughout this whole process was the fact that the customer service representatives and the field staff actually understand exactly what happens as soon as that new connection order is requested. And when all those different process steps are then discussed in the future with the customer, they can talk with confidence about those steps, because they can physically visualize and empathize with the customer about the scene that the customer is in. It's really powerful. And for us, building trust with our customers and always looking for ways to improve customer experience is really paramount for our future customer service strategy. Moving on to the next slide. What I'd like to talk about here is some of the key lessons learned. So first and foremost, the storyboarding process, which VR Vision really helped us go through and really work with us hand in hand throughout this whole journey is paramount. So I would really say get as many of the future actors involved in that storyboarding process. So each of these different parts of the business are experts in their area, but if they can provide input in what they want to show the audience on the day, they can maybe have a simple process, but they can actually provide input into instances or to make the scene a bit more dramatic in certain areas based on the full story. So involving the end actors into the storyboarding process will help improve the filming on the job site, because when we get to the job site, we already have an understanding of exactly what to expect and how the scene will run. But also for the learning experience, it really brings across the whole journey, and everybody puts a lot of passion and enthusiasm into the overall journey. So to me, that's the key, is getting everyone involved early, and so everyone understands the end goal. So using formed storyboards from other takes is really useful, and showing somebody an end product, even like a YouTube version of the solution, really helps everybody understand how the solution will get stitched together. And also, you don't film it in the right order, and also that's confusing for some of the actors. So there's more contextual setting, the better, to help the production effect. Second point for me is health and safety. So health and safety at Hydro One is absolutely paramount. Number one priority in all our job sites in the office and out in the field. We did have a health and safety representative on site during the filming day. And we, as one of the key scenes is a tailboard, which before we do any work at a job site, everyone involved in that job goes through all the different safety aspects. So that's a key part of the actual scene creation. But I would say create a checklist ahead of time. So to double check the safety elements, to make sure that every single piece of PPE is worn appropriately, worn in the correct way, the spacing of any vehicles. We just make sure that everything is correct, and we're following all health and safety guidelines, because at the end of the day, our training material needs to ensure we're following all our health and safety protocols. And lastly, lessons learned for us, we did a pilot group, and the pilot group helped us identify the class size, the duration, lots of the learnings around folks that haven't used headsets before, how to actually access it. So we learn a lot from the pilot group. But I would also recommend doing a pre-pilot with just the actual beta version of the YouTube recordings for the 360 video, because you get a lot of what and why questions from the audience. And before you lock down the final script, those what and why questions can actually be included in the voiceover. And that will help to sort of enrich and make the training a bit deeper in certain parts, where you think you've covered everything and all the audience members voice everything they want, but those extra questions from an unrelated party help to add further flavour to the material. So for us, a pre-pilot would have helped us. But overall, we're very impressed with this solution. Internally, we're looking for other use cases, and we've got a lot of interest from other lines of business in actually participating. So people such as in our finance team and our real estate team, who really haven't got much exposure to the customer journey, are really looking forward to going through this material. So we're actually seeing our target audience keep expanding from the 500 and so we started with. So the audience keeps getting larger and larger day by day. But we're looking to continue working with VR Vision on new use cases and expanding our internal offerings for VR in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really lucky audience. We have a lot of time for questions and answers. So what we'll do next is we're going to go through some questions and answers. Now, what you can also do is, if you want to refer a specific question to one of the speakers, just note it in the open questions here and say, hey, this is a question for Jonathan or Holly or Jim, and we can answer it right there. But let's see what questions we have open here. There's a question for Jonathan. Do your learners have a better reaction to this environment, considering that they are looking at live videos instead of a VR environment? I'm guessing it's a question towards it being 360 instead of 3D. So that's a question for you, Jonathan.
Yep. So the 360 works really well for us because we're able to use a real work site and make it become really real for the audience. On the advice of VR, we actually chose a VR 360 recording because from a production effort time to getting the product live, it was seen as the best way for our use case. So the reaction from the audience and the learners has been really positive. And I wouldn't say that we've seen any degradation from having a 360 video versus a like Meta Universe style.
Fantastic, thank you. And that's one thing we noticed as well in creating this content is if it's purely educational, a 360 video, interactive 360 video is an incredible medium. But whenever we want to get very hands-on and it goes beyond education into actual, like, let's say, procedural-based technical training, that's when the 3D and the CGI and the pure metaverse solutions start to shine a little bit more.
Connie, can I jump in and caught a question that came through the chat earlier?
Mm-hmm.
It was from James during Holly's portion. And James asked, with the pre-employment assessment, did you find that there were folks who knew the content but had trouble executing it in the VR environment, or did they take to it pretty naturally?
I haven't experienced that. We do periodically have individuals that struggle with the VR, just the point and click or how to hover or move inside of there, the general steps. The nice thing about what we have to offer is it's multiplayer, so we can have one of our coaches or our trainers in there with them, just to at least get them started with what the movement looks like. The main thing that we're looking for is, in this case, it would be, can you identify the components and what the purpose of that component is? What function does it serve on the truck? If they're struggling through that, that's still a conversation that can happen inside of that VR headset with the coach connected.
Awesome, thank you. Got lots of questions coming in. This is great. A question from Danielle. Did any of the presenters, this is for everybody, use VR without use of a headset, or do you have any advice for this scenario?
So I'll jump in. We had a couple of folks who felt a little bit nauseous when they're going through the training. So and they recognized that first, that maybe tried some of their children's gaming equipment and had the same experience. So we actually used the longer YouTube version of the material, and we, as well as the VR sessions, we're also, for a very small subset, we're also using the YouTube material as a source of learning, so that everybody's included. And if you're not able to wear the headset, or you don't want to, then we're able to actually include everybody in the learning experience.
Yeah, for us, it was kind of the same. We project, if we have a learner that's really good in the headset, we can project it onto a display as long as they're not moving their head around real frantically or anything. It's a good way to not be fully immersed in the virtual reality, but still see what the learner's seeing. So we use that quite a bit.
We don't have experience with that at Toyota, so I can't address the question.
And just answer, yes, this webinar is recorded, and we will be sharing the link afterwards. You'll get an email from us. Okay, let's see. We have a question here from Danielle. Can anyone speak to how they incorporate VR training that requires feedback? Currently, we run programs that incorporate live in-person trainers who can give immediate feedback to someone's work. I'm in the legal industry, and this means giving feedback on how someone is presenting an argument they might present in court, etc. And they are trying to envision how a VR environment could be incorporated.
Yep, I can potentially take this one, Danielle. So there's a couple of ways we can do it. One is where the trainers, the trainees, or the participants can all be in VR at the same time. They'll be able to see each other and talk to each other in real time. So it wouldn't be pre-programmed like a recording, but it would be more of a live session. And specific things would trigger as the trainer triggers them depending on the event that they want to happen. So much like how we're seeing each other now, we'll just be in a virtual environment. The other method we have is that we have a cloud solution where basically the trainer manages the group of students and they can communicate through their laptop. So much how I see the chat here, they'd be able to send these messages directly to devices and see what those people are seeing and communicate and control the content that way.
That's great, thank you. Okay, we have a question here from Kai. Are participants executing the trainings by themselves as learn alone, or are the trainings embedded in a classroom concept?
See Ronnie shaking his head. I would just
it's both.
So for Avangrid, we actually have all of the above, right? So we have a trainer module that's just straight open environment, and you can go in with a trainer, and the trainer can basically conduct class. We have a trainee module that is led step by step by AI voiceover on, you do this, now you do this, now you do this. And then we have a testing environment, which is actually really neat because now you have the opportunity to go in and test and potentially fail. And then get that feedback and assess why you got that feedback, and then try again, whether it's through another trainee module or whatever. So I think that for Avangrid, it was really neat to see us do all of those things, especially with multiplayer being so impactful, to get a trainer actually in the environment with our students.
For Hydro One, we actually have instructor-led groups. So we kick off the class by explaining how the headsets work and what to expect, and how to get the best from the learning. So everybody would then go ahead in a group, but do it individually. But right after, we then have like a group session where we all discuss what we learned and how to put it into practice in their particular job. But then everybody gets to debate and discuss about everything they learned, what they found surprising. So it's sort of like a cross-sharing of the knowledge, which is really good to see at the end of the class. Everyone's got different perspectives, and everyone generally is very surprised about some of the roles they didn't know and what those functions were in the field and how it's going to really help them in the future. So we find the instructors great at pulling those insights out at the end of the class, and everybody gets the best from the learning.
Thank you. There is a question here from James. Does anyone have any additional suggestions beyond getting other teams involved early in the process with regards to organizational buy-in? How do you get other departments who will be involved in the creation and approval of the process on board?
Again, for Avangrid, it was showing. We developed a pilot and we showed. And initially, we put some folks in headsets that we hadn't developed just to show them the complexities and the possibilities of virtual reality and the concept, right? So if we're very transparent with what we see today in virtual reality and where we see it, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that's where we really started getting the buy-in. And then obviously, everything comes down to financials, the ROI, the cost benefit analysis, developing those and being very, very detailed with them on, what we're going to see again over the next 3, 5, and 10 years. That was how we went about achieving buy-in.
For us, we have a strong learning and development culture here at Toyota. We, brought several individuals together. We had data and analytics that supported struggle points for technicians in the field, especially if they're first coming on and maybe they're not getting the ample training that they need. So this gave us an opportunity to incorporate some data and analytics that we could say they are being trained, they've demonstrated they can do those things, and it helps them build a lot of confidence. So I think that at first it probably wasn't as hard of a sell, but we went in with maybe a little bit smaller budget, something a little less complex. To prove it out, we took it to some major events that we had, so our dealer network had an opportunity to experience it. And they're the ones now that are driving more of the demand for that than as opposed to us pushing it. They're excited about this. If you're in training, if you're a training professional, you know that most people don't get excited about going to training. When you say you need to go to training, nobody likes to sit there for 4 hours or an entire day, let alone a week. And so this is the same for our technicians. They just get really excited about having a different avenue to learn new material. So that's been a huge selling point for us.
And for Hydro One, we started off very small. So we picked a very small use case. So sort of a low risk investment for us. But the hardest thing was finding a possible work site that we could film at. So the stumbling point was, where can we film? How can we engage a customer? We hadn't done it before, so we didn't really want to take that risk. So we're very, very fortunate that working with my counterparts in the field, we're able to find a friendly employee who was actually building a brand new house at the time. So we sort of leveraged that and worked together in order to have a whole low risk end-to-end take at that premise at an employee's house.
And one more quick point I think that Jonathan and Holly alluded to is once this was built, it kind of caught fire. I mean, our recruiting team uses it nonstop. It's a big draw for us at any events that we go to, any conferences. So we utilize it, I guess, well beyond training too, to show that our training internally is cutting edge and we're doing things that a lot of other companies aren't doing. And it really impacts our recruiting as well.
Awesome. Thank you all. We have a question here from Carrie, which everyone may have a different answer. How long was the entire creation process from an initial meeting through full rollout?
I could take this question. after I have to fix my email as well here. So if anyone is trying to reach out to me, sorry, I just got a little typo there. It's VR Vision Group. We'll fix it soon. But in terms of the question about the time needed, it'll vary depending on the complexity of the courses being created. For example, Avangrid's and Holly's courses were relatively complex in terms of interactions. So those took about 4 to 6 months, if I remember correctly, from start to finish. And that includes things such as planning, development, and then iterative kind of like QA until final release. While interactive 360 videos can usually be produced in a faster timeline, typically anything from 3 to 4 months per module, and multiple modules can be created simultaneously. So you are not locked into just doing one thing at a time.
Thank you, Ronnie. We have a question here from Tasha Nori. What do you think is the difference in the educational effect of CG training compared to filmed training? Why did you choose CG? Why did you choose filmed video?
So for Hydro One, we chose the 360 video because we're able to recreate scenes we're able to stage the environment very easily. So for us, the speed to market to get the product built and created, it was the most efficient way. And we felt that it would take away from the experience. We want our learning team and the learners to see Ontario, the rural Ontario. We wouldn't be able to create the same feeling using CG.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, right, I think as Ronnie talked about earlier, the stuff that we developed was very process heavy, very, the things that we see in the field are very kind of repeatable within the environment that was created. So that's why we went, with the full metaverse route and really kind of integrating those hands-on on-the-job training experiences, because that's what we were lacking, right? Is the repetition of being able to put people in the situation that they could reenact all of the different processes. And so that's why we really decided to double down on the metaverse.
Awesome. Okay, we have a question here from Ali. What advice do you have incorporating VR with work processes that are extremely unique across multiple departments? Have you found certain topics that could be applicable to everyone? Safety comes to mind, but wondering if there are other opportunities to explore.
Allie, we right now our primary audience is for our technician base. So some ways that we're trying to utilize some of the models that we already have is for the core electric, we have part identification, but we could use that same modeling to do troubleshooting and diagnostic, electrical theory. There's so much more that we can do with that same model without recreating it from start. We have done some investigation on things such as safety training, especially with our dojo site. We're not ready to move forward with that right yet. There's no particular reason other than, this is still a relatively new technology and we feel like we have it in the right seat at this time. But it can be expanded across other areas. Safety is the one. We've explored some operator training on, how to operate lift equipment that we may have. So that's been an option as well that's kind of surfaced. But right now my experience is only with the technical side.
For Hydro One, we're actually quite surprised. So we filmed the whole scene with the audience of fields of the office staff being the primary audience. But what we did learn throughout the whole journey that the field staff also want to know what happens in the contact center, which surprised us. I didn't really think they'd be interested in that particular aspect. So they're keen to join the program to actually look at the earlier aspects in the customer journey. And that wasn't part of our intended use case, but we are looking to explore that to reuse that learning for a different team than intended.
Yeah, and then I mean, for us, the metaverse has kind of given us an opportunity to. We haven't gone full health and safety training by any means, but gives us an opportunity to talk about situational awareness, right? If you're going to operate this switch, what does it do to this neighborhood next to us? If you're going to go in this vault, what does it do for the traffic that's coming down this street? So it gives us the opportunity to discuss those things, even though they may not be implicitly part of the module.
Thank you. Here, we have another question. Depending on how long you've been in your respective programs, have you been out in the field? Have you found that if VR is being used during onboarding early onset of training, that colleagues are progressing through learning curve quicker versus other learning programs?
I know for us, that's kind of the data that I was talking about that we're still kind of trying to wrap our heads around. There's a ton of data, both coming from, our learning analytics for progression programs and from the devices themselves. And so that's a whole nother aspect to all of this for us is truly understanding how to use that data and analyze it. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that question.
Yeah, we're still evaluating data too. The one thing that I'll mention is grasping the new skill seems to be quicker than if they're looking at a PowerPoint. However, if we have our product sitting right in front of them and we could do the same thing with pointing out the components, I think it has a very similar effect. But there's a big if that truck is available, if we can pull it out for training. So that's one of our biggest constraints when it comes to that. I would say also the technicians have displayed a lot more confidence, right? It feels like they've not only acquired the skill, but they can repeat it over and over after they have the opportunity to actually go through the motions, as opposed to if we didn't have VR and if the truck or the product isn't available, they would only be looking at what those components are on a PowerPoint screen. So as an alternative, I think hands down, either VR or actually having the product in front of you and going through the motions is the best training and learning method for our technicians.
And for us at Hydro One, our most recent new hire groups have all used the VR headsets, and we found that the confidence speed was there. I can't say it's purely the VR training, but it certainly was an influential help. But it's still early days for us. But people generally felt more confident and could talk credibly about the material and the equipment out in the field.
Great. There's one question that came through the chat from Kai. How long is a learner usually in the application regarding like motion sickness?
For us, we kind of let our learners determine that. We have modules that can take a half an hour, 45 minutes. We have the capability of staying into, the metaverse as a training group for well beyond that. We find that most of our learners only have an appetite for probably about 20 to 30 minutes at a time. After that, you do run into, you get out of it and it's, whoa, what kind of happened here? But that being said, once they've developed and done a few of those 20-30 minute sessions, they do kind of tend to lengthen them out a little bit more each time. And so we want to be very careful, especially with that initial onset, not to deter anybody from the technology. So we kind of let the learner determine it, but initially I would say we're right around 20 to 30 minutes.
For Hydro One, the whole experience is an hour, but that's including orientation of how to wear the headset and also the follow-up afterwards. So the actual the viewing time is 30 minutes. The feedback from our initial pilot group was to break that up into different chunks. So if somebody does want to take a pause, they're able to, and it's a natural fit in order to restart at the logical point in the material. So we got some good lessons learned from our first pilot group, and VR Vision were able to help us incorporate that for our full release.
We have a similar experience to what Jim and Jonathan mentioned. So I don't have anything in addition to add to that. It's about 20 to 30 minutes for us. We don't force people to stay in it longer. If it's just not for them, they can bounce out at any time.
Yeah, it's a great question and great comments. One thing we noticed as well, just for the audience as well, is when it came to analytics, initially we were tracking sessions, but session could be something that somebody goes through for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So one thing that we're changing in terms of like how we're tracking deeper analytics is looking at completion rates, for example. So not just, well, one person went into it, but did they complete it? So we're trying to dig deeper into more meaningful data and analytics to figure out how much time actually people spend in the beginning, but also over time in VR. And there's a lot of data points around that we're trying to gather and have some meaningful insights over time.
I've had users who have asked to do it again, and they said they feel like they get a more in-depth learning when they know what they're looking for the second time around. So they're actually requesting to participate in the training multiple times, even though it's the same module.
Well, looking at the clock, we are getting towards the end of our time together. Do you all have any last closing words you want to share with our audience before I wrap us up for the day?
I would just, like to thank the speakers very much. Extremely great job at answering the questions and presenting. Really much appreciated, and of course the kind words towards the company. And I know there's a bunch of questions in the chat that we haven't been able to answer, but we'll try to get back to you after the webinar is done. Like there's some great questions around ROI, and we've even provided some really great interactive tools around that. But just to help answer that, it's different for every organization. Is something I would look at, and it's something that you really have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis, because something that is an incredible solution for one company doesn't mean that's universally for everyone. And I guess that's something that you can see in the use cases here, right? Like, Holly is training their dealer technicians, Jonathan is working with the customer care team, or Jim is training the technicians and apprentices, right? So the application is different for these organizations, and sometimes when they're even in the same space, like utilities. But overall, fantastic job to the speakers. Thank you so much. This was one of the easiest presentations I had to do because I did so little. So I really appreciate all of you coming and presenting today, and passing it on to Avery there now.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. I mean, the chat was blowing up, lots of great questions coming through. And like Ronnie mentioned, we'll make sure that they get all those questions so they can follow up with any ones that we missed. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up with some closing slides here. I would like to invite you all to join us for some other upcoming training industry webinars this month. You can register for these programs and watch past webinars now at www.trainingindustry.com. All training industry webinars, including this one, are pre-qualified for a credit hour for SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. Some additional resources for our learning leaders. What is CPTM? It is the Certified Professional in Training Management program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. You can participate in a virtual practicum from anywhere in the world. Find more information at trainingindustry.com/training. And I would love to meet all of you in person here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2024 Training Industry Conference and Expo. TICE is where learning leaders like you gather to forge new professional connections, learn from each other, and address their most pressing learning challenges. Re-energize your learning initiatives at TICE 2024 next June. Advanced early bird registration is now open through the end of December, and you can learn more at TICE2024.com. One last reminder that an evaluation survey should have popped open in another tab in your browser, and we would greatly welcome your feedback. Thanks so much again to today's speakers, Ronnie, Holly, James, and Jonathan, and our sponsor, VR Vision. And thank you all for your time and attention. I'm Avery, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.